Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and I'm an attorney that assists nurse practitioners with employment contract and independent contractor agreement issues. And today I'm going to be talking about terminating a nurse practitioner contract. So if the NP is unhappy, finds a new job for whatever reason, what is the best way to terminate the contract, and then some things to think about prior to actually taking the step. So first, you need to identify how you can terminate the contract. So for the most part, there will always be some kind of without cause termination, meaning either party can terminate the agreement at any time for any reason with a certain amount of notice to the other party. So usually it's somewhere between 60 to 90 days. Some nurse practitioners are surprised, I guess, when they see kind of a larger notice period, especially if, as they worked as an RN. You don't have to give any notice, or 2 weeks would be at least an acceptable amount of time. Whereas if you are working as an NP, many times that is acceptable. So 60 or 90 days. That's simply for continuity of care purposes. They don't want a nurse practitioner walking on a Friday and say, "Oh, I'm done. I'm not coming back again." Maybe a patient's scheduled out for a month or more. And so they just want to make sure there's some kind of continuity of care associated with the nurse practitioner leaving. So that's the first thing you need to identify, how much notice you have to provide. How to provide notice is also important. At the back of your contract, it's very likely there'll be a section that's called notice or notices. And this will tell you exactly how you can provide notice. So it's going to be, it's going to have to be in writing, and then either hand delivered, sent certified mail. Some places will accept email, although it's pretty rare. And so that 60 or 90 day clock won't start until you provide effective notice. So just verbally telling your boss, as I said before, sending an email, that's not going to start the clock. And so you want to be aware of that. The next consideration would be malpractice insurance. If you have a claims-made policy, someone is going to need to purchase tail insurance. And so in the contract, it's going to say who is responsible for it. So you need to identify what type of policy you have. Is it occurrence? Is it claims-made? And then who is responsible for it? And then if you are responsible for it, you're going to have to secure that tail policy prior to your last day of employment. And so you want to make sure you look at that. And then two more things. One would be, do you have to repay any bonuses? So if it's a new job and they gave you a signing bonus or relocation assistance, then almost always there's going to be a time period associated where if you don't stay for a period of time, you may have to pay back a portion of it. And I'll give you an example. So let's say you get a $10,000 signing bonus. It'll say, all right, you have to stay for 2 years. And then if, maybe it's an all or nothing thing, meaning if you don't stay for 2 years, you have to pay back the entire $10,000. Ideally, you would want to shorten that time to maybe 1 year and then do monthly forgiveness. So, let's say you leave 11 months into the year, you don't want to get stuck with having to pay back the entire amount instead of only 1/12 of the amount. So that's one thing to think about. And then last, what are the restrictive covenants? So do you have a non-compete, a non-solicit, a non-hire, a non-interference, a non-disparagement? All of the things that kind of kick in of what you can't do after the contract ends. You need to identify, all right, what are my non-compete obligations? For how long can I not practice? What's the scope that I'm restricted from doing? As a nurse practitioner, you want to make sure that the scope is very specific to what you're doing. So if you're working as a hospitalist, you don't want to say you can't do any nurse practitioner duties or any nursing duties. You want to say you can't work as a hospitalist for 1 year and 10 miles. Therefore, you have a whole bunch of options. Or if you're working, if you're working in a cardiology clinic, you want it to say you can't work as a nurse practitioner in cardiology. You don't want to get stuck in the situation where you simply can't practice as a nurse practitioner at all. And that does happen, but you have to be absolutely certain that the language is very specific to what you're doing for the employer. All right, that's a little background on things to think about when you're going to terminate a contract as a nurse practitioner. If you have any questions about terminating an agreement, any employment agreement or independent contractor agreement issues, feel free to contact my law firm at the information listed below in the description. And I appreciate you watching the video. All right, thanks. Take care.